This is Scott Fain, and my guest today is the director and co-founder of the Know Your Neighbor Block Watch nonprofit, an organization formed in 1997 to prevent crime, promote education and home ownership, develop community resources for at-risk youth, elderly, and low-income persons by offering opportunities for personal growth while creating a friendlier, cleaner, and safer neighborhood. If I had a studio audience, this is where I would say give it up for Miss Joyce Davidson. But in lieu of that, please welcome to the discussion.
Hello, Scott.
Thank you. Hope that wasn't too awkward for you.
No,
I gave a brief synopsis for your organization at the top of this, but can you elaborate a little bit more on what Know Your Neighbor does to prevent crime, promote education, home ownership, etc.?
Well, Know Your Neighbor was founded because my husband and I moved into a neighborhood that once was a very prestigious neighborhood, but as the city changed and the mills went down and the people left, the face of the community here on the north side of Youngstown changed dramatically. So even though we have excellent housing stock, the changes because of unemployment and all the issues that come with unemployment, we went from having a lot of homeowners to renters, and the homeowners who were left were more senior citizens like my husband and myself. So we found ourselves in a neighborhood that was on decline, and therefore we said, well, we have to do something, and we realized that is why God had us in this area, to help with the community. So even though I was very sick, the first time I tried to take a flyer next door, I didn't even have enough strength to walk next door. But despite that, we were able to start the block watch with a few with a few neighbors, and to start bringing change about to the community.
So this was like a kind of outreach to first starting with the neighborhood, door-to-door outreach?
No, not exactly. We tried to organize a group to come together to form a block watch. Usually a block watch is like 3 or 4 streets or whatever in the area, and we work with our councilmen and various city personalities and the police too, because there was issue with crime also. So as a part of the block watch, I'll put it this way, the block watch at that time worked closely with the police department, and the police department had a set of guidelines that we would go by as a block watch. Okay. One thing about block watches, they can grow, which is what our block watch did. That is why we're thinking about changing our name, because sometimes people think, oh, that's just a group who work with 2 or 3 blocks, but we have become much more than that.
That's actually that was my follow-up on that. It sounded initially like you were talking about just like a regular neighborhood watch, but it sounds like it's a little bit more involved, a little bit more in-depth with what you're doing. Like what's the, if I'm coming to a Know Your Neighbor block watch meeting, like what is it we're doing a little bit, just kind of on a day-to-day basis?
Now we hold monthly meetings, and our next meeting is tomorrow. So on our agenda, there's always the community police officer who updates about the what's going on in the neighborhood, and they also handle routine issues of quality issues of life that might be going on. Maybe somebody's putting the trash out too soon, or a dog is running loose, or people not cutting grass. They get that information and they will act on that. Our council person Nate Pinker is always at our meetings if possible. He brings his perspective from what the city is doing. Then we have our projects that we work on. So we worked, I as a grant writer have submitted grants so far. I submitted 3 grants. 2 were rejected, but this third one for the youth greening was accepted. So we'll discuss that. Plus, at our next meeting, we'll discuss the dinner we want to have for veterans. And this is our first time doing something like this. And what we're doing, we're working with another group that's already on the north side, and they work with veterans. So rather than try to invent another wheel, we just collaborate with other organizations. So this year we're collaborating with the United Methodist Community Center because they work with veterans who have issues with because of being in the military. So we're working with them. We're also working with an organization called Heart Reach Ministries. They work with young people and provide a lot of after-school programs and summer programs. They have daycare, and they have several other things going on in their building also. So
so it sounds like you have a lot of you got your network working. Like Know Your Neighbor is about networking. It's about keeping the community together. Initially, it sounded almost like the community meetings that a lot of neighbor, that people might have. I work off a lot of movies and television, so that's kind of how I connect and interact with the world. So it reminded me of something from The Wire. I don't know if you're familiar with that program where they have a lot of people that will, they had a couple of scenes where they're almost describing what you're talking about. You've got a police presence there to kind of talk about the neighborhood, what's happening on the ground in the area, and let people get familiar with the police that are policing their area. Well, at the same time, you're getting familiar with other organizations that kind of, because everything already overlaps a lot with the community. You've got people with education, you got people with income and housing and so on and so forth.
Right.
So as far as your organization, what's your organization accomplished that you're most proud of?
Well, one thing we accomplished was becoming a 501c3 organization, which I did that without the help of an attorney. That was one of the benefits of being sick at home and not able to go anywhere. And I didn't mind doing research, so I pursued that. And we were able to get grants. The first $5,000 grant that I received, somebody brought it to me. No, that wasn't the first one. That was the third one. The first one was a different group that came to us and asked us to write a program, a grant. So, which we did that for 2 years. But before that, we were involved with the schools because there's a school on our street. So even though we weren't really paying attention, our name was becoming known because of the work that we were doing in the community. One of the first things that really impacts me is that our group of young people, we call them neighborhood ambassadors, and I work with another block watch on the north side. We were a really good team. With the other block watch, though, between the two of us, I would always write the grants, and we would collaborate, even though we were two different groups. Part of our sessions, the educational part, we would come together. But the first year, we had about 20 young people. And, they had me sweating a lot of times, even though most of the time we had other adult volunteers who worked with them because I couldn't do that. But I would go out there as much as possible. And one young lady gave me a very rough time. I mean, she had me sweating. She was just a difficult child. But the following year, she was the first one to come back. We have received another grant. She came back, and she brought a friend. And then, tragically, before the program started in June, she was walking home from school, from, a party, and was shot and killed by a drive-by shooter. That really impacted me, especially when I went to her home and talked to her mother, and they treated me like I was a celebrity. And I'm thinking, well, what's going on here? Well,
because you engaged with her.
Oh, pardon me.
I said because you engaged with her and they saw that change.
Right. And that program meant the world to her. The family was going through some extreme situation. Her mother had been injured on the job and was burned real badly. And they had very, very little income at the time. And what this program did, because I believed in trying to give the kids a gift card, if all possible. So if the kids worked 6 weeks, 2 days a week, they would get this $200 gift card. And with that gift card, her family, they just said how much it meant because she was able to buy school clothes. Without that, no school clothes. She was able to help, I think it was her niece, to buy some school clothes. So it meant so much to them. And at her funeral, they bragged on the fact, yes, they bragged on the fact that this young lady was a neighborhood ambassador. So that meant a lot. It showed me sometimes we don't know how God is using us to bring about change. So I realized this program helped us, but not only the young lady, but her family also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what did they say that pools in the pond, you drop a stone in the pond, the ripples are felt, all the way to the edges. You might not see it all the way, but they're there.
Right.
So just taking that time to spend some time with, the young woman and learning from you. And I like that she came back the next year,
right.
with, like I said, with a friend.
With
and
a
like
friend.
This was through the Know Your Neighbor
right.
program that you created. Okay.
Right.
I want to be clear on that.
Right.
Now, if someone wanted to help you in your mission or join with you and they've heard something on here that they want to connect with you about, how would they reach you?
They could reach me through our Know Your Neighbor email address, and that is jdavidson.knowyourneighbor@gmail.com.
Okay. Once again, I'll repeat that. J Davidson, that's DAVIDSON .knowyourneighbor@gmail.com.
Correct.
My final question for this morning. If you were on an island and could only bring 3 things with you, what would you bring?
I would bring a good study Bible, a nice thick notebook, and a pencil or pencils.
Explain what's a study Bible? I don't know if everybody would know what that means.
I would want to do some research into the Word of God and use my time wisely and be able to write. And my life is based on the Word of God, so I would have to have my study Bible there so I can look up things and meditate on what the Word of God says. And then in my writing, I would write about probably about my life or things I have experienced about other people. So I'd have to have more than one pencil.
My answer is very similar, although I said I'd have something to write with, a satellite phone so I can call people in my family and whatnot when I need to talk to people, or sometimes you just want that other voice. And
right.
probably a bottle of wine for when I'm done working and writing, and I'm sitting on that beach. That's what I would bring with me. Something to write with, something to talk with, and something to have a drink later on at the end of the day.
Right. Well, I didn't know if I would have any electricity, so I better go other route, because otherwise I would bring my little iPad. And it would have the Bible and everything on it.
That's true. And nowadays you can just say, I'll bring my tablet or whatever, and then you got everything covered.
Right.
But if
I don't have any batteries or electricity, hey, then I'm stuck.
Right.
So that's why I went to the notebook and the pencils.
Anyway, I want to thank you again for doing this, for talking with me this morning. And just for anyone else, again, who's interested in contacting Miss Joyce on joining her mission, the email address to contact her is jdavidson.knowyourneighbor@gmail.com. This has been Scott Fain. Thank you very much. Have a great one.